Hi, mystery writers. Today I wanted to talk about something that happens, especially with new writers, but it can also happen with discovery writers, pantsers, and that is you're writing your story, and all of a sudden, a character who isn't a main character just starts to blossom and it feels like they're taking over the story, and if you let it continue, it can really derail your story. Let's talk a little bit about that today. Every writer has the experience of characters acting and speaking in unexpected ways. I mean, that happens to all of us. And even with the most detailed storyline, once you begin writing a scene, characters do something that you hadn't planned in your outline. That's very common. So, when the protagonist or the antagonist speaks pithy words or acts in a surprising way, you're on the way to enriching your story and deepening your character. So, that's always a good thing. And we've talked about this before here. But sometimes a supporting character will grab the baton and try to run with your story. And sometimes that's because they're a really fun character to write and you just love getting into them. Um, but what they're doing is trying to upstage your main character and take that center stage away from your protagonist sleuth. And that's not good. That's going to derail your story, and your readers are going to wonder what the heck happened. So how do you put a character back on track when that starts to happen? um, because what happens for you as a writer is you question your story, you question your character choice, and you wonder how to get control of that character who's just like running with it. All right. So you don't have to go back and rewrite the whole first part of your novel, and you don't need to switch character roles to give the character a more prominent space. Um, you do need to notice the character's scene grab and then consider what you're going to do next. So here's some ways to look at that character and what they're doing and how you can take control of your story back, um, and stay with your main protagonist. All right. So first of all, just examine that scene that you're writing right now where this character is blossoming out, right? Uh, and look at the beginning, the middle, and the end of the scene and how it's moving the story forward. Remember, this is what we want each scene to do, move the story forward, okay? So, first of all, does that new character's unexpected action fulfill the scene requirements? Are they meeting the scene objective? Are they helping your main scene character um, eventually solve the crime? That's the purpose of every scene in your mystery novel. Okay. Then the next thing you want to do is double check that character's uh, context in relation to the story. I know I talk about context a lot, and it's really important, and it does help you with things like this happening. Um, what is this character's context? Are they a suspect? Are they a sidekick? Are they a love interest? And does this action or dialogue that certainly popped up in your scene, does it actually fit their story role? If it doesn't, you can just cut that part out and also go back once again and look at what that character's role in that particular scene is, and make sure that the scene is moving the entire story forward. Another thing you can do is look to see if there's another place in the story where the unexpected character action would be a better fit. And this certainly works for supporting characters like the mentor or the love interest or the sidekick. Is this surprise thing that they're doing? It may be really cool, but maybe this scene isn't the right place for this to happen. So you need to save that character action and put it in a more appropriate place in your story. Um, so that way you're keeping the most important elements of this character and tossing the others and giving it better placement in your story. Okay? The other thing is maybe this character is telling you an important part of your story and you hadn't considered that important part of your story. And this can be like when it's time to rethink your story and how you had originally conceived it. Um, so, will the character's action change what follows in the story? And will you need to change um, villains or make a different suspect the villain? Um, Retiring your previous choice of a villain. I know this happened to me in one of my books. I was working with the characters and looking at the suspects, and the suspect that I originally thought was the villain. As I looked at a different suspect, I realized that they would actually make a better villain. So, kind of shift the focus of everything that happens in the story and your detective's relationship and what they discover with each of the suspects. So, I just want to make this clear that just because a supporting character tries to grab the story and run with it, it doesn't mean that they're doing something wrong. It actually may be a clue for you that you want to reshape your story a little bit. The other thing that can happen is this character pops up and you really like this character, uh, but what they're doing doesn't actually fit in this story. So just take a deep breath. And remember, William Faulkner said in writing, you must kill all your darlings. So you may want to actually cut the action. Um, and if you like the character and you're really fond of this new character, um, you can save them for a bigger role in a different story. So those are 5 different ways you can approach this supporting character trying to run with your story. So, what it boils down to is balancing your intuition, and your intuition is giving this character a bigger space in your story than you had originally thought. But what you want to do is take action before you write more. So, when you discover this happening, when this character is just blossoming on the page as you write, um, remember that your intuition created this character and the action. So if what the character does overpowers the scene, then you want to trim the action to keep the balance in the scene. Or add another action from your main character to give your protagonist that thrust in the scene. So give them back the center stage of the scene, as it were, and then continue on with your story. So your story is the guideline to making every scene work. And it is the reason all your characters are there, right? So your characters are the agents that move your story. So let them do and say what comes into your head as you write, and just make sure they're acting within that story construct and that their story role context remains the same, unless you decide, as I mentioned earlier, you want to actually change that character's context in the story. In other words, you're going to switch villains. The suspect that you thought was going to be the villain takes a subordinate role, and this new character is the one who ultimately becomes the villain. So you have to balance your intuition and your rationale. You really have to think the creative part of you created this character and their new actions, and the rational part of you needs to think about how they actually fit in the story and how much power and space and time you're going to give them in the story. Ooh, excuse me, I feel like I have to sneeze. So whether you're a pantser or you are work with detailed outlines, expect your characters to do the unexpected. We just know that this happens. It's a part of the process. Then you have to make sure that you fashion those actions to fit within your story. So sometimes you may want to actually expand what this character is doing because you like working with them so much. Sometimes you may want to limit what they do in this story and give them a whole new bigger space in a different story. And 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 sometimes you just want to make sure that they stay within their story role and don't try to upstage your main characters. Okay, I hope that helps. I think the thing you should remember with this is that those unexpected actions do happen. They happen with your main characters and they also happen with your supporting characters. So you just want to make sure that those supporting characters don't try to take over the whole story, but they stay within their story role. All right. Thank you so much for being here and keep writing. And if you have any comments or questions, please leave them in the comments.